Hello and welcome to PMCLounge.com. In this video, we are talking about Kanban Backlog. Now, you might have heard about Kanban, you might have heard about backlogs, you might have also heard about the Kanban board. But what exactly is a Kanban backlog? Backlog is something that you might have read about when you studied Scrum or when you got to know about Scrum, because there's a product backlog, there's a sprint backlog. By the way, if you want to know the difference between a product backlog and a sprint backlog, we have done a video on it in the past. I'll share a link to it in the description below. Check out the first link that will take you directly to that video. But let's talk about the Kanban backlog in this video. To begin with, let's start off with Kanban definitions. Here are some definitions from across the internet by some of the renowned names, and how do they define Kanban. Atlassian says Kanban method is a means to design, manage and improve flow systems for knowledge work. So according to Atlassian, Kanban is for knowledge work only. The method also allows organizations to start with their existing workflow and drive evolutionary change. They can do this by visualizing their flow of work, limit WIP, and stop starting and start finishing. Next, we have a definition from Investopedia. They call it Japanese for sign, that's the word Kanban, is an inventory control system. So pretty different from how Atlassian defines Kanban. Used in JIT manufacturing to track production and order new shipment of parts and materials. One of the main goals of Kanban is to limit the buildup of excess inventory at any point on the production line. This definition holds good for how Kanban came into being. But as it started to show up in the IT environment, the definitions changed a bit. And that is where you see the difference between the definition of Kanban by Atlassian and by Investopedia. Let's take a look at a couple more. Kissflow says, Kanban methodology is an agile method that aims at continuous improvement, flexibility in task management, and enhanced workflow. With this illustrative approach, the progress of the whole project can be easily understood in a glance. Very important. How powerful is it if you are able to understand the progress of the whole project in a glance? Next is Agile Alliance, and they say the Kanban method is a means to design, manage and improve flow systems for knowledge work. So Agile Alliance also use the word knowledge work, just like Atlassian. A general term for systems using the Kanban method is flow. So flow is a general term, and we will see why this term makes a lot of sense. Reflecting that work flows continuously through the system instead of being organized into distinct time boxes. And I would urge you to read this last line again. Flow reflects that work flows continuously through the system instead of being organized into distinct time boxes. When I say time boxes, I hope you remember Scrum. I hope you remember how there is a sprint backlog with a certain time box. But when it comes to Kanban, it is not organized into distinct time boxes. And that's the difference that we are going to understand more of as we go deeper to understand what Kanban backlog really is. And Kanban is a Japanese word meaning visual board, and this is the original Kanban system. The source is Toyota Global website, and you can see boards here. You can see work here. The person is actually moving a work from maybe to do to done or whatever, right? So this is how Kanban looked when computers did not exist, when the only way to present something visually was what you see in the picture. All right, let's move on and let's try to understand what a backlog really is. This is something that you might already know if you have read Scrum. So an accumulation of uncompleted work needing to be dealt with. That is precisely what a backlog is, a single line definition. In agile project management, a product backlog can be prioritized list of work items. So product backlog can be prioritized by the product owner. That is possible, and that is why in agile project management, when you see product backlog, it is not just a list of uncompleted work, but it can be a prioritized list as well, as to whenever the team finds time, what is the first uncompleted piece of work that they should take up. All right, moving on, let's talk about the product backlog and sprint backlog a bit, just so you understand where we are coming from. So this is the Scrum framework, and here you see the product backlog. From product backlog, work items move to a sprint backlog. This is essentially the output of the sprint planning meeting, right? So I just wanted to give you a brief look at what product backlog and sprint backlog really is and where do they fall in the whole scheme of Scrum framework. But our focus should be on the Kanban board and the Kanban backlog. So there are different types of Kanban board. One of the most popular one that you're going to see out there is a board that has 3 columns, right? To do, doing, and done. That's it. But on real life projects and on real life actual groundwork, you will see that Kanban board tends to be more cluttered, just like the picture that we saw earlier. So here's an example Kanban board. What it contains is a backlog. This is essentially requirements or accumulated piece of work, right? So these all are stuff or work items that the team is yet to do, followed by design. So these 2 items are in design. Designers are currently working on these 2 items. Then you have build. So this work item is essentially being coded or developed. These 2 items are being tested. And then finally, there is one item and the release team is working on deploying this to production. So this is how a Kanban board might look like for an IT project. But the point to note here is that when it comes to projects, especially projects that have a start and an end date, Kanban might not really be the right method to track those, because Kanban has closer association with ongoing operations rather than one-time projects with a start and an end date. So Kanban is something that you would do on ongoing operations where requirements keep coming in the backlog, and then you work through the requirements, going through these different steps like design, build, test, and deploy. So requirements keep coming and you keep deploying. There is no end date to this entire Kanban board. Next is continuous flow. The focus of Kanban is on continuous flow of backlog items that move directly to the next step and not into another backlog like Scrum. So I hope now you remember the previous slide where we talk about the product backlog and the sprint backlog. So unlike what we did in Scrum, where we moved work items from the product backlog to the sprint backlog, so that in that time box of the sprint we deliver those work items, that is not something that you are going to see in Kanban environment, because there is going to be just one backlog and the items move directly to design from here, not to another backlog. Finally, there are work in progress limits. Based on the team's capacity, progress limits are placed so that none of the step becomes a bottleneck. If you have just one person working on deployment and that person can only deploy one work item at a time, then it makes sense that work items do not move from test to deploy unless and until there is space here, because the person working in the deployment stage can only manage one work item at a time. So that is what a work in progress limit is all about. So that's all that we had in this video. I hope you were able to understand what a Kanban backlog is. Don't forget to check out the videos linked in the description. If you like our work, consider contributing at pmclounge.com/contribute. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.